Boom, 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 boom.
Boom, 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 boom. What's up, Charles?
Doing fine, brother. Doing fine.
Aloha Friday, everybody. Right now, everybody looking at their clock, at their calendar, and trying to figure out, wait a minute, wait, is this the live or is this the recorded one? No, this is live, and it's Tuesday, September 7th. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight after a nice long weekend. Pretty uneventful, Charlie, looking at the numbers, and I mean, it's nothing different. Not different. It's everything is almost predictable now. You notice on Tuesdays, on Tuesdays, we always see the lower numbers, right? On Mondays and Tuesdays, because on weekends the lab doesn't work at its full staff. So you get the lower numbers on Monday, on Tuesday, and we'll probably get it again tomorrow because the Labor Day was yesterday. So, and it's amazing how again, I'm not gonna mention names, but the same guy comes up on those days and say it's starting to plateau. We're starting to see the numbers decrease. It's every week, Charlie. Every week. It's the same story. But bottom line is our positivity rate today, statewide, over 10%. That means there is a lot of disease, and that there is that it's being undercounted. So it's a lot worse than it seems as far as cases go. Hospitalizations is still climbing to the 500 mark. So there's a lot of things that are happening. So we all got to stay safe, stay careful. I know, Charlie, you have a lot of comments, and I cannot wait. I'm gonna bring this up, and then I'm gonna sit back. I'm gonna let you go because I know it's a little trigger. We had a long weekend. Our governor, lieutenant governor, and the mayors all asked everybody to behave. And we heard from all of the police chiefs that came out and said, if you don't behave, we're going to come out and we're going to issue you tickets or arrest you. And what did we see over the weekend? We saw a ton of gatherings, and that's kind of what I wanted to hear your thoughts on. Thanks, Sharon. Nice haircut. Yeah, it's like short. So what's your thoughts, Charles? I saw your post. I saw a couple of your posts. I thought was straight and to the point.
Well, let me start off by saying, something that I'm just curious about. For some reason, in all the posts that we see, they talk about the number of cases. Okay, it's almost becoming routinely because why? The number of vaccinated individuals statewide remains at 63.8%, and it's never moved off of that. So I don't know if anybody's paying attention to it. I mean, if we're having that many vaccines, the only way you can get a percentage to remain is that if we vaccinate 15,000 more, that means that 15,000 more is moving into the state. So the number will be continually at that 63.8 rate, right? I mean, that's the way I looked at it. So I said, gee, why is it that's one? Two, if you have someone come into the state and because of your safe apps or the Safe Travels app, right? And they upload it. Now, I'm still unclear as to, do you have to have word prior to you getting on the plane? Does it have to be uploaded and it's confirmed it's uploaded? Or can you just upload it and jump on a plane and hope that it gets uploaded by the time you reach your destination?
No.
It's supposed to be uploaded already, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. If you arrive, and this is from personal experience, if you arrive into Hawaii and you do not have your negative,
you automatically
test,
quarantine.
Bow, done.
Yeah.
Over. You cannot participate in safe travel. Quarantine, automatically. Yeah.
But I think the reason being there's so many open-ended explanations because we don't have the National Guard anymore. I mean, they're monitoring the thermal scans at the airport. And then we don't have airports where they have the police officers standing by like it first was. And really, if somebody wanted to walk and didn't want to participate, I think the only thing you can get them on is signing that declaration that you're willing to, do whatever. I think that's the only thing. I don't know of any other. So I guess the point what I'm trying to say is, if we look at the numbers, the person who is uploaded and lands and has a positive COVID result, I'm assuming now, and please forgive me, folks, but I'm just throwing it out there. I'm assuming that the Department of Health is targeting just that person. So if you're looking at me on the camera right now, say Charlie Ona arrives positive. So you look at me as that single traveler, but you report the rest as community spread. Why? Because I may have infected 15 to 20 people that sat around me for that 4 to 5 hour flight from the West Coast to Hawaii. And you folks don't bother to stop them or question them or even test them. Because why? They played by the rules and they had everything done right, and therefore they cannot be stopped. That's part of the
What you can say?
yeah.
It's an imperfect system. I know this question when I asked about people that arrive positive and who does the contact tracing, I was informed that it becomes the CDC's responsibility, that they are the ones. So basically what happens, they arrive positive, the CDC is supposed to be informed by the airline, and then the CDC gets the manifest from the airlines, and they're supposed to notify those people in the plane that wherever their little sphere of infection could possibly be. Not everybody in the plane, Charlie. Not everybody in the plane. So now, if that is being done, I don't know. I see now that Honolulu Airport has a CDC terminal now. They actually have a CDC terminal. But how is the CDC being informed? If you're on Kauai or Maui or Hawaii Island, how is the CDC finding out that passenger that sat in 18B was positive?
We do have a CDC terminal now on Kauai. So when you come off the plane, you come off at gate C, and then the next plane come off at gate D, and then the next plane come off at gate C again. There's your CDC. I don't know. I don't know, brother. I'm trying to understand it because, I have to say this, and I'm so proud of the crew that I'm affiliated with and work with. We are hammering it, regardless of if we get cooperation from the DOH or not. We are hammering it. Sometimes we call, and maybe their phone lines are tied out. We can't get through. We'll call an emergency number, and there's only so much that can be done, right? And that number is non-responsive. Okay, then we just do what we gotta do to protect Kauai. Now, I can only speak for Kauai, so please, folks, do not get mad at me if you folks are having a heck of a time on the other, like the Valley Isle or the gathering place of on Honolulu, or Molokai, or someplace, or even the Big Island. I can only speak for the crew that I am proud to be a part of, and be their boss, because everybody takes credit at what we do. But the thing is, it becomes tiresome, because one day we might have everything like clockwork, working like clockwork, doing what we're supposed to do, stopping that spread. And then there's some days it's just all these glitches. And when you're dealing with and my understanding is there'll be other plane loads now arriving, like Air Canada, I understand. I just heard about that. They're going to be arriving. When those planes start coming in, we've only got so many people in conjunction with the screening that's done by Roberts Hawaii. There's only so much you can do. There's only so much space you can do it at. So I think there needs to be something worked out where we can find alternative measures to try to alternate. So when we bring the people in, because what happens is when these people come off the plane, they have to be guided and they have to be, I find it very, very ironic that when you are bringing people into certain exit points, you cannot let them go out the normal exit points because then nobody will check them, right? They need to be checked. And so what happens is when some areas get too full, like say on the south side of the entire complex, right, of the airport, those passengers that just will not wait will walk way over to the north side where you normally get off with Hawaiian Airlines, and they'll come walking out. And just so happen a Hawaiian Airlines flight comes in, and these people mingle in with the Hawaiian Airlines flight. They guess what happens? Everybody look like they just came from Honolulu. And what does that mean? Then everybody starts funneling through that because I see it. We see sometimes we see bands that people get banded, and we can see them in the crowd. But someone has to be very punctual. You have to be very, very polite. And I know tempers get a little bit heated sometimes because of the wait. But nevertheless, the employees have to be very, very polite because first impression, right? Well, I can tell you one thing. These people, they're upset because of the time they're waiting there. And I don't blame them. They're packed like sardines in the main concourse. So, what do you do? But everybody loves Kauai because
Mhm.
Kauai's numbers are probably the lowest in the entire state. So, it's kind of a damn if you do, damn if you don't situation.
Well, we're lucky that the COVID Delta variant doesn't infect visitors. We're so blessed.
Okay.
Yeah, thank God. I mean, can you imagine if COVID Delta infected visitors coming from the mainland? Can you imagine the problems we would be having? Can you imagine the numbers?
Yes.
But we're just lucky that the COVID Delta is smart enough to tell the difference between a visitor and a returning resident. So, and for more than just the reasons of airplanes and airports, I on Kauai. This is just on Kauai now. You see the top number 350 per week, and the second number 400 plus 3 times a week. That is how many visitors on Kauai that attend our luau's. That's only two of, I believe there's three. There's a third luau that I couldn't get the numbers for. But I can tell you that one of the resort luau's, 350 people every Thursday. And the second one that I was able to get verification of the numbers, 3 times a week, 400 up to 450 visitors attend that luau. And that's why I'm so thankful that COVID Delta doesn't infect visitors, because can you imagine if it did? And imagine if those 300 people, live video interrupted. I don't know what's going on. Here we go again, Facebook. Guys, I'm on YouTube. If we get booted off of Facebook, head over to YouTube on my channel. I don't know why, I just saw that pop up on the screen. But anyway, can you imagine if COVID Delta infected visitors and 350 people once a week that go to a luau that come in contact with servers, luau employees, and then the other one 3 times a week with 400 or so per luau. So that's 1,200. Imagine if COVID Delta infected visitors, and now those visitors come in contact with our local employees, and those visitors that fly back home leave back their infections with our local residents that are working and serving them. They're chanting and they're cheering and they're clapping and then the local employee goes home and spreads the virus to their family members or maybe their second job or third job here on Kauai.
Mm-hmm.
And then the visitor goes back home, gets the sniffles, goes get tested, boom, positive. But that number does never gets reported to the Kauai numbers. And then the poor local resident employee now passes it on, but they cannot tie it to a cluster. They cannot tie it to a location because the visitors are gone. So guess what, Charlie? They count it as community spread. That's how this thing has been. Now, I hope we're still on. Are we still on? I'm not seeing any comments now. Okay, there we go. Yeah.
Yeah, we're on.
Okay. So anyway, so that again, back to my point, it's a good thing COVID Delta is smart enough not to can tell the difference between a visitor and a returning resident, and that's why we don't test them when they come in. In fact, we don't even test them before they come in. Tonight we have Dr. Kapono Chong-Hanssen and Dr. Akiona, and I'm going to bring in Kapono right now.
Oh, by the way, before you do that.
Oh, shucks, I clicked the button already, but that's okay. Go ahead, Charlie.
I know you made the comment that I have some comments and thought I was going to.
Kapono right now.
What were you referring to? Because I would love to comment on that point of probably.
Oh, about the gatherings, about the protests in
okay.
Waikiki, about the all of these huge gatherings that have been occurring over the long weekend. And
that is something that many of us former law enforcement, we've kind of been toying with that because there was a big presentation made with the governor about what would take place, the amount of force that will come out to kind of address that issue. And sadly, nothing was done. Maybe something was done, but it's not being promoted as such. I saw a lot of, well, let me talk about the governor's proclamation first. You know, he talks about section 21.05, which gives the enforcement arm of his proclamation from, I believe, was March 2020. From that time on, that, you know, if you see people outdoors not wearing a mask and all of the other stuff, and, you know, not taking safe practices, right, you can actually cite. So I would have expected at least citations to be issued. And see, when you're going to deal with a crowd that big, most officers that I know, we come out with 5 or 6 ticket books.
Yeah.
Because we know we're going to be doing a doozy. For some reason, unless my lens on my media that I was watching it being played on was somewhat foggy, and it left out those tag books.
Yeah. Well, HPD did report today on the news that they gave out over 100 tickets and over 200 warnings.
And you had how many people down there?
I saw an estimate of over 700. I saw another estimate of over 1,000.
And
so
we sure saw a lot of no masking, right?
Oh yeah, there was absolutely no masking. That was the whole purpose of the protest, was no masking, no vaccines, and
yeah.
So there's Dr. Akiona. Hi.
Aloha no.
Hi.
Oh, there he is. There's Kapono.
All right, aloha. Yeah, I was waiting for my
Sorry.
whole aloha to come on.
I was talking to Kai Kahele. He had just called, so.
Yeah, he just texted me. He just texted me and said that he just got off the phone with you, so give you a pass for being late. He really did. He really did.
Tried to get it out, because yeah, his sister and I were classmates. Ihilani, she's amazing. And so
yeah,
she's been, yeah.
So he said, just finished talking to Dr. Akiona. We're going to employ rural Native Hawaiian vaccination pop-up sites across Hawaii Island over the next 2 months. So awesome. And I'm sure that's.
Hey, Mel, can I ask the doctors a question right now? I'm going
to. No, Charlie.
Yes,
no.
It's on my chest, and I want to get it off my chest so I can enjoy this evening.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead, Charlie.
I've been a proponent of the booster shot, and I'm going to take it as soon as it's available. Okay. Now, having said that, can you tell me the difference between a booster shot and a vaccine? Can anybody, and what's the difference between the two?
So
Well,
I mean, it's essentially the same thing, sort of.
Okay, so if they are the same thing and there's no boosters available,
No,
I'm already vaccinated. No, right now that you can go in and like on Kauai, we can go in and get a booster. So if I've already been vaccinated with the Pfizer, and still there's a lot of Pfizer pop-up vaccines being given, and it's been over close to 8 months now. Can I just go get another round of Pfizer shots in place of the booster that supposedly kicks up my immunity? Can I do that?
I might be able to comment here that so
Yeah,
the CDC made a distinction between boosters and what is being recommended currently, which is a third dose for immunocompromised people. And they make a big distinction between a booster. And so a booster is sort of like, okay, you had an adequate response, but we want to boost that adequate response. Right now, immunocompromised people are thought to have maybe not have had an adequate response to 2 doses. So the third dose is to hopefully give them an adequate response. And to the CDC folks that, are entrenched in this stuff, that's technically not a booster. So, a booster is more for the general population, which we're all hearing will happen towards the end of this month for some people, and we're not sure exactly how many.
But essentially, it's the same shot. It's just that you're starting off at a different. The person is starting off at a different immunologic level, essentially.
Okay, so I guess for the naysayers out there, so you understand it's the same shot, but at the same token, if we really want to ramp it up and be safe ourselves, we should go get another set, right? Or will we be taking away an important dosage that could be for someone who wants to get the shot, but will be
so it's been a conversation, and I feel like majority of the people that have come to me with this question are generally pretty reasonable, because in general they are pro-vaccine. They want to be protective. So when we talk about it, and I'm telling them, like, essentially my focus for my clinic really is the first and second doses, getting the first and second doses into arms. And then they understand, they're like, okay, so am I taking away from other people? They like, we can have that nice conversation, is, then because a few people have this understanding, like what they believe to be high risk might not be exactly what I believe to be high risk. And so, we like, the nice thing is we're able to engage in a normal conversation, and we talk about, that, like what Kapona was saying, the difference between a booster shot and a third dose, why certain people need that third dose, and why I believe that for them that would be a booster shot, and that at this point it's not fully recommended that they need it. And then so and they can understand that they don't want to take away the opportunity for someone else to take a first or second shot. That being said, sometimes we have those extra doses at the end of the day, and so those were the ones that they come back and they're like, so about those, they have those conversations, and we to the best of our ability, we try to just educate people about why we're doing what we're doing to begin with, and then the difference between, like you said, the booster and the third dose.
Yeah, I have to admit, I was one of the first vaccinated on Kauai, and part of me, based on the data that's coming out of Israel, I feel like I should get a third dose so I don't expose other people. I'm protected from hospitalization, but I don't want to expose my patients. And I'm tempted to use one of those extra doses that we're going to throw away at the end of the day because of the multi-dose vials, but I haven't yet. But I hear that concern.
Yeah, because I think Misco is even saying, like, all the high-risk guys, all the first responders, all of the hospital, the people who are exposed to it a lot, we probably should put that little effort into getting an extra shot in their arm. But that's an unofficial, kind of based on what we're seeing in Israel. Yeah.
Just want to make it clear, as I see a couple of people asking, it is the same dose that you got in your first dose, your second dose, and it's called the booster, but it's the same dose, the same vaccine, or same.
Yeah,
Pfizer.
The nice thing about the
different.
The Moderna, they're actually able to change a little bit. So they were actually able to change that little target molecule based on kind of what's been going on. So that's the nice thing about mRNA, is it's not that it's, they're able to kind of address things as they change over time. But yeah, same shot, same dose, same everything.
In other words, if you're in line with people that haven't been vaccinated and you got your second shot and you're there for your booster, you get in the same one. It's not they don't pull that one out of a separate freezer and say, okay, it's the same dose.
Or if you're at a diner and you're sitting down and your face just can't reach the level where the plate and the food is, they put a booster to lift you up so you can get to it much quicker.
I take that personal. I'm very short.
Come on, Charlie, be nice. These people are nice people.
No,
I
Capono
couldn't
is
tell
very
if-
tall.
I don't know what you're talking about.
So how's it going, docs? How you guys doing? What's going on? And I know we got a ton of questions popping up about the mu variant and the lambda and all that stuff. But we kind of wanted to talk about what you guys are working on here in Hawaii, the joint ventures that are happening between doctors across the islands to help communities. So I don't know who wants to start, but
Maybe if I may, because I think I'm
Yeah.
a little bit more familiar to the audience. Dr. Miskovich is familiar to the audience, but Dr. Dang Akiona, I just call her Ko'ohi. She's been, to me, as far as I know, she's like his right-hand man as far as Hawaii Island operations go. So I texted her and said, we should go on there. We should go on the show. I was hoping we could have a little bit of focus tonight on Native Hawaiians in particular, because that's really the passion that both of us bring to our practices. We're both Native Hawaiian Health Scholar recipients, and we have some similarities in our background. I think, we both look back on our the pre-COVID days, our fun days at Akubon in Honolulu, singing karaoke, having fun over there. I recently found out that our principal, Mahina, at Waimea High School, Mahina Anguai, that was her.
Yeah,
So I told her,
gave her
you're welcome. You're welcome for the business, but
I gave her an allergic reaction by accident. She's allergic to macadamia nuts. Do not give her macadamia nuts.
So I thought that we would tell a little bit about our background, and there's a lot of talk right now because this surge is really affecting Native Hawaiians. There's a lot of talk about crisis triage and unvaccinated people, and we're finding out that our Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander populations are under-vaccinated in comparison to other populations, but both of us have been working our tails off to try to address that situation. So kind of wanted to get into that, and because Kaohi is new, I really wanted to give her a venue to speak. New to this show, but I guess I just want to quickly say, my background, I grew up in Iowa, which I think a lot of people are surprised by now. That's where my father's from. My mother is from Hawaii. I'm a descendant of Samuel Manaia Kalani Kamakau, who is a prominent Hawaiian historian. So I was always raised with a really strong sense of kuleana to give back to my community, which I thought of as Native Hawaiians. And so that's what I pursued over the course of my career as I went on in my education, and I ended up where I am on Kauai working for Ho'ola. And Kaohi has taken a little bit different, but I think similar path, and I'd let her explain. But I do remember when I was at USC med school in LA, she came up and visited. I think she was there for an interview, and she decided to go to the University of Pittsburgh for medical school. But so we both went away for our medical education, at least for part of it, and then decided to come back and focus on serving our Native Hawaiian community. So I'll pass it off to Kaohi, but I'm open to any questions, and we can talk more about the surge, about triage, and I think we'd both like to talk a little bit about Regeneron, the antibody treatment for COVID.
Sure. Okay, Doc, take it away.
Kauhi?
Hi.
Okay.
Hi from the Big Island. So yeah, no, I think, you guys, I keep on popping in, and usually it's late, like Misco. I'm usually driving from somewhere, and then I pop on with Misco. So yeah, so I'm on the Big Island, and I grew up all over because my great grandma is still alive, and she's a Ka'ulula'au from Hana, Maui, and ended up as a kid. She ended up getting moved. Her mom and dad split, so mom was a Makahanohano and Kupele, and then they ended up on Oahu. And so we have some family that was down in Kalaupapa and down in Hana. And then my dad's family is Chinese Hawaiian, and they're in Keauhou and Kona, and then they ended up in Waiʻehu and Maui. So we're all over the place. And so the nice thing was when I went to college, I went to University of Hawaii because my dad forced me to go to college. And then I did the 2 degrees. I did Hawaiian studies and I did biology. So I did cell and molecular biology. I was a lab nerd. And then I was down in the Lo'i, and University of Hawaii really gave me a hard time about that. They said it was a waste of my time to do both. So because they said that, I did it because I just didn't like that they would say stuff like that. So I did 2 separate degrees. I essentially had to do like 24 credits a semester for 6 straight years because they were like watching me real that I wasn't double dipping. And the nice thing was, you know, I could hang out with my Hawaiian language people and then still go do some biology stuff by day. And so that we ended up like, you know, I think a lot of my background is because I got pulled into community health. And so essentially, I think I talked to you guys about this maybe a little bit before, but I did a needs assessment. So it was for all the islands I got to visit, and I talked to families, I talked to patients, I talked to doctors, I talked to all these people about cancer care and why it wasn't working for Native Hawaiians. And so when I went away, I already knew I was going to come back and that there was all these problems. And I was really sad because in 20 years since I did that research, it hasn't gotten better. And so the nice thing is a lot of times when I'm talking to patients, I can tell them, like, you know, back in 2004, when I interviewed so-and-so, these were the problems that we knew were happening in Maui. And these were the problems that we knew were happening in Lanai and on Molokai and on Kauai. And this is how it was different from what we knew was happening on Honolulu. And then, you know, as a professional on the other side, I can see how things have shifted. We've had a big time brain drain. So a lot of people have left, and, you know, kind of what's happening now, where we're kind of making do with a lot less resources. And then, you know, so I think I tell Miskel, the painful thing for people like us is we live in that gap between what people think is going on and then what's actually going on. And so our job right now is to elevate, right, and to make sure that the public understands that difference between what we think used to happen and then what actually happens now. And that's really big for Native Hawaiian health. So for me, it's been, and I think Kapono and I get along in this way, in that we are not afraid to make a little bit of noise when we see something that could be better. And so a lot of times it's, you know, the people that are in charge of Native Hawaiian health, they need to hear from the community folks like us that are in the community so that they can understand how care is delivered to the actual community. Because when you're sitting in the university and you're not actually seeing patients, what you think is happening is not really what it looks like in reality. So when you're sitting in Keaukaha and you cannot get a PCP, like, you know, the people with the funding actually needs to hear about that. And that's basically where Miskel kind of helps me, right? Is we gotta be able to say those things to the right people so that we can help be a part of the solution rather than just kind of reporting more issues and not understanding kind of where the disconnect is. And so that's my role. I'm his little Hawaiian firecracker, he says, and I just try and make sure that everything that we're doing is equitable. So if we're going to do it for the resorts, we're going to do it for Keaukaha. And if we're doing it in Kaneohe, we're going to do it for Miloli'i. And we try to be equitable with all of our efforts.
Wow. You talk really, really fast.
I do.
Are you Portuguese at all? Any Portuguese?
By guilty by association, I think. That's my team right now is very Portuguese.
We're crossing all the barriers tonight. We're crossing all the barriers tonight. Anyway. So what's going on statewide, docs, I should say? What's going on statewide for our Hawaiian community? And, you know, I think we see a lot of, especially in the rural areas, we see some areas, not necessarily Hawaiian communities, but just communities in general around the state that are in the rural areas, that the vaccination rates are lower. What are we doing as far as getting out to them? I know Kauai, we have, I think we have 2 or 3 of these vans that go out. Dr. Kapono, you're out every weekend hitting the rural areas with your vaccination clinics. But are we making headway in getting our outer areas vaccinated?
Yeah, I think, you know, that was one of the things that we talked with the Department of Health, because I think our technique, so we were using like our street technique, which is basically you keep on showing up and you keep on showing up, and then people eventually trust you. Because what we understood was the initial wave that we're going to get vaccinated, we're going to be the low-hanging fruit, and that's great. So those are the ones that they can afford to get to someplace. They can either take off time from work, they have a car, they have the desire to get vaccinated, and that was what all of the hospitals kind of scooped up, right? So they're just doing these big vaccination clinics. You get the people who are able to come, and where we kind of are, where we focus and where our strength is the second and third wave. So it's the people who are maybe don't have time to come, maybe they don't have transportation, maybe they don't have the education yet. And so we were that to me was the money, because we were saying like the initial waves were going to get you to a certain rate, but in order to get that vaccine wall up, you had to get above like 80%. And in order to do that, you actually had to put a lot of focus into like the rural areas and all of the barriers that we knew already existed to care. So for us on our island, a lot of it is access, because geographically speaking, we're just kind of like the size of everybody else on top of it, right? So we just have geographic issues, and then we don't have good public transportation. And then, it's just, there's no one solid healthcare network on our island. So it was, having to kind of make sure that we were keeping an eye to the pukas. And so that was what we did with the COVID testing. And then so for vaccines, it was about trying to figure out where public housing, senior housing, and all the little nooks and crannies, and then essentially just showing up week after week and just being consistent. And that was, they let us do that, at least. That was hard work, but we still do it.
Well, I just wanted to add on that, with the Delta surge, we've seen this shift from Native Hawaiians being doing fairly well throughout the pandemic, being about, the number of cases representing the percentage of the population. That's the statistic you can see on the DOH. And now Native Hawaiians are now exceeding the population. So 24% of the cases are Native Hawaiian, 21% of the population is Native Hawaiian. So that has shifted since the Delta variant surge has occurred. Other Pacific Islanders, other Native Hawaiians have always been far overrepresented from the beginning of the pandemic. And we're also finding that we're probably under-vaccinated. I'm having a hard time finding a great statistic for it, but I know in the Associated Press article, they threw out a percentage of 40% vaccination rate amongst Native Hawaiians, which is certainly lower than the state average, for other races. So we're seeing that we're probably an under-vaccinated population, and because of that, primarily because of that, we're getting hit hard by the Delta surge. And it's sad for us. But we're chipping away at it, and we're just going to keep on chipping away at the block. That's what we're doing on our Saturday clinics, is going to the under-vaccinated areas. A lot of them are where Native Hawaiians tend to be as well. But, we just got the data based on zip codes, so it's not like we broke it down by race. But that's what's changed. I think it's a really more of a key intervention now to reach Native Hawaiians. We always knew it was a key intervention to reach Pacific Islanders, and that's part of what we've been doing all along, with going, particularly our vaccination clinics that are in Honolulu, like Laukona. That's where we tend to reach the other Pacific Islanders the most. But that's been the shift with this particular surge.
Yeah, I gotta say with this one in particular, it was so we were calling a lot of the positives, and then the positives. So right now we don't have even enough resources for the DOH to do the contact tracing. So the positives are having to kind of help us do the contact tracing. And it would be like the most difficult conversations, because families just assumed everybody was vaccinated. And this is how we would find out who within the family was not vaccinated. And then it'd be like, oh my God, she lives with grandma. Like, what the heck? And then we'd have these big kind of like moments in family time where it's like, I guess, it was real quiet, hush, like, people just assumed everybody did it. And then, now we're a year in and finding out which pockets of people were not vaccinated, and then having those conversations. And then it's been an interesting struggle, I think, because some of it is, I get the cultural mistrust. We've lots of strange things. I remember talking to families on Maui where people's names were just like transposed, and then they would mix patients up, and then that would ruin healthcare for like an entire village. And so, we have real reasons not to trust people, but then, now it's just, I think like navigating new political waters at this point. And so we try our best to kind of like have as many messages as possible. Cause I'm like, bruh, your grandparents didn't survive all this other smallpox and all this other stuff just for us to like fall now. Like this is the worst time right now to fall. And so I think but it's been interesting because families, the dynamics themselves have been shifting just with the Delta, like, and fatigue.
I got to ask one question, and that is, with the numbers that we've been experiencing now, in the beginning when there's testing, was there an actual way of finding out what type of virus, what kind of virus was actually hitting us?
Yeah.
Because they said that there has to be a special way to test for this Delta variant. Yeah. And so, I mean, with the numbers being as large as it is, I mean, did the health department or the state lab all of a sudden says, okay, we have this magic device that maybe was wrapped up and nobody bothered to unwrap it to use it way before?
No, so the thing was the private labs are actually a lot stronger. And so I can tell you this because I was harassing them like last year. So because it was bad. I was like basically harassing all the labs about capacity. Because for me on the Big Island, they were sending everything to Oahu or they were sending it to Texas and they weren't telling anybody. So we were having the 2-week turnaround time. And I'm like, whoa, so and it would really matter on what time of day. So I was like, and so I called clinical labs, and so nationwide, they actually were not doing a good job in terms of the amount of samples that they were sequencing. So we were way behind everybody when it was coming to tracking where those variants were coming and how many of them were around. And so I would like have these conversations with the pathologists at clinical labs because the state labs that we were getting nowhere. So we're like, essentially what was happening was if there was like an issue with they had junker assays in the state lab than they did in the private labs. And so they were basically, a lot of it was going to clinical. And then, so there were a lot of these phone calls that we were making because I'm like, okay, so if you guys need surge capacity, where are you going to send it? Like, I want to make sure that we have, like, if we need 80,000, where is it going to go? And so we were pushing to make sure that we would have a turnaround time that was reasonable because we were telling them if it's 2 weeks, you're like, there's no use. And people are going to tell us like, it's no use. So that we pushed them. And then essentially we got like an analyzer on island because it was, with the amount of people, and the state lab was telling us like a 200 sample a day machine was enough for the entire island. I was like, how many people you think live in the Big Island? 200 people. It's so dumb. So but we were putting pressure on them from the beginning. And so when the nation was falling behind, we were trying to figure out who exactly we could put pressure on. And they stepped up. So the private labs actually stepped up a lot, big time, because we were, when we were having breakthrough or what we thought was seemingly more serious symptoms, we would call. And then it's really like all of this bureaucracy and stuff, I can tell you, is super frustrating because, we would ask the right questions and still it's super hard to get follow-up. But if you put enough pressure on it, eventually, like Misko, you guys know he's persistent. So, we just. But,
let me ask you this, just based on what you're saying, and this goes towards Native Hawaiians too. If there's not, so if you folks aren't available to ask the tough questions and keep on pushing it, I mean, what does the state do? They just hope and pray nobody finds out, or like I remember in the police department, if you get the same person calling us up, you're saying like, okay, I'm gonna give her one answer, and I just hope that person goes away and don't bother us again. I mean, that's what it sounds like. They're hoping that we go away and we disappear in the background. Yeah. And I don't think that's fair to anybody, whether it's Hawaiians or non-Hawaiians, because people are people. People's life depends on it. It just so happens it seems from what you and Kapona have said is that the Native Hawaiians have been taking some real mean cracks at and only now it's kind of like coming up to the forefront, right? Because you're bringing it out.
When that was the thing, I think that was why we were persistent. Like, I mean, there were months where I had 0 days off and I was constantly on the phone, and it was because of this. It was because, like, to us, we had this thing, like my team keeps on saying, it's like, if not us, then who? And it was like, and then the answer was still us, just with attitude, because there really wasn't, people didn't understand. Like, we felt like there was too much to lose if it didn't bother people. So then I would always think about that. Like, I know I'm irritating, I know I'm a pain in the butt, and then, I'm pissing them off. But then if I don't ask the questions, and I was trying to get the questions to the right people. So at some point it was the Kim administration, I would talk to Roy Takimoto and I would say, hey, you got to ask them these questions. You got to ask them these questions. You got to ask them these questions. You got to hold the lab to this. You got to ask the labs why, and giving them these questions. And I was like, because when I think about it, and I think I mentioned it last time I was on, I think about my parents, and my parents are they're high school sweethearts, and my dad worked his ass off, but we would have been sick. Like we wouldn't have made it like that. Like currently how things are. I mean, and those are the people I'm thinking about. It's like the Keaukaha people, like they just don't know. And the system just, quietly sweeps us away. And that's not okay, because I mean, they didn't even know that they're starting off so disadvanged. And yeah.
If I can piggyback on, I think the stereotype of a lot of Native Hawaiians is angry. Angry Hawaiians. It's yelling, whatever. And I don't think that's completely untrue. I think that Kauai and I probably fit in that category a little bit as well. But I want people to understand that, when we went through our education, we learned time and time again about these pandemics that just decimated our population. I mean, and to us, we can name the people, we can look back at our genealogies and count the people, that were, that died because of pandemics. And I think I don't mean to speak for Kauai, but I imagine it was like the same thing for her. When this started, we were like, oh no, like this is not, we're like, this is not happening. If I have any, anything to say about it, if I can do anything about it, I don't want to let this happen. And I think that's why we both approach the situation with a similar tenacity and passion. And yes, it can get us down, but every day we try to bring it up again. Another stereotype, which I also think is somewhat true, is the Ni'ihauans will say here, po'opakiti, right? They say it so fast. Po'opakiki, but po'opakati is like so fast, hard-headed. I mean, and that's a very common thing we run into. And I think part of it is, distrust, not knowing who to listen to. But I think Uncle Charlie, Mel, I can imagine you with your children. We all have loved ones who we wish would have gotten vaccinated earlier and not paid the price for not getting vaccinated. But that doesn't mean that we feel comfortable not caring about them. And I think that there's starting to be more of this voice that unvaccinated people have brought this on themselves, so they don't deserve care. And I think we're getting into some pretty uncomfortable territory with that. I know that it's a need to talk about triage because of limited resources, and that we haven't taken aggressive measures to change that situation. But we are working with what we have, and we care about these people. There's a lot of historical reasons why Native Hawaiians and other Pacific Islanders would be more hesitant to listen to the Department of Health, more hesitant to get vaccines. And there are also socioeconomic factors why it's more difficult for these people to get those vaccines. And just, I wanted to point out, that our Hawaiian kingdom, though, we see a lot of our culture being misappropriated, aloha, pono, being, I would say, misappropriated to justify not wearing masks, not getting vaccinated, and I would call it making any kind, doing whatever you like. But I think it's a good reminder that the Hawaiian Kingdom made smallpox vaccination compulsory. That was required. So when a similar opportunity arose in the past, the leaders that our people generally think of being the best leaders we ever had, or maybe not ever had, but the ones that we wish we would have in comparison to today, they made similar decisions, aggressive decisions to control pandemics. And when vaccines were available, made it compulsory.
Couple of things. Number one, I don't think the state has done a good job with educating, especially the rural areas. I just don't. I think we've dangled the carrots, we've done the bribery tactics, but we haven't educated our people as it relates to the vaccine. I remember, believe it or not, I sold cars for a year and a half, many years ago. And my first day of sales training, they sent me to Honolulu, and the guy said, no doesn't mean no. No means I'm not ready right now. I need more information. It doesn't mean no, don't take it as a no. In other words, keep going for the jugular. That's why car salesmen are so ruthless. But the other lesson I learned when I was a young parent was from much more wiser parents who came up, and we had discussions about, when do you talk to your kids about sex? When do you talk to your kids about drugs? When do you talk to your kids about alcohol? And this guy told me this, I'll never forget it. He said, would you rather you tell your kids about drugs, or would you rather the drug addicts tell your kids about drugs? Now think about it, right? If we're not educating our people, whether they're Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders, Portuguese, tucked in the backwoods of Kauai, wherever, if we're not educating them, and the only noise they're hearing is from this people from this aloha, which they should be, we need to sue them to even get them to stop using the term aloha, the Aloha Freedom Coalition. If that's the message they're hearing, think about this. If their only message they're hearing is from the loud people that say vaccines are going to hurt you, kill you, gonna do stupid things to you, and that's what they're going to listen. And no one's there to counter that, except a few commercials on TV. But I think we got to do a better job and use that damn CARES money, train people into the communities to educate, inform. That's our theme of our show. And you know what? This small little show that we have here has provided the necessary information for people to change their mind. Because they once said no, but when they said no, they didn't have enough information. And I think that's where we lack statewide, is we're not getting to the people that need to really understand the benefits of the vaccine. So they're hearing it from the clowns under the guise of aloha. Those guys are nothing but a bunch of thugs, this Aloha Freedom bullshit coalition. And again, we got to get there and share the benefits and in a way that they trust us.
Yeah.
Because right now they don't trust the government.
I think that was one of the gaps that we kind of recognized early on. And it was one of the, it's one of the weak points that the United States has. And it's like you just don't have, we don't have the same access to primary care that we used to. So, I mean, I grew up with Dr. Clevenger in Kaiser. He knew me from when I was a baby until I left pregnant for medical school when I was 28. So, I mean, he was somebody that I knew I could talk to. On the Big Island, we just, we have some of the biggest, we're well insured. So almost everybody has insurance, but the access to an actual provider or somebody that you can talk to is a lot lower. And so that's the reality. So, you're right. The noise fills in. And so like a lot of what we're doing now, it's just like, and that's part of what we do, right? We just talk to as many people as we can. And then I tell them, okay, now your job is to talk to your friends. And then, when we help change people's minds and stuff, this is like, now you got to pass it on, because this is like, unfortunately, we've talked to like lots and lots of people, but their families don't have the same access that I used to have to my doctor or to somebody that I could talk to and ask questions. And it's not the same anymore. And so a lot of it is like somebody's brother, sisters, uncles, cousin who had some weird, super rare reaction that nobody can confirm or deny. And then that just passes. And then I got to sit there and tell them how ridiculous that sounds. And then like, it's, I got to basically revamp everything that they believe and kind of shake their world up a little bit and tell them, no, take the shot, dummy.
I honestly going to resort to TikTok. I've been trying to learn TikTok because I'm doing my research on social media and finding out that
the mayor get him. You got to do the mayor, right? The mayor get TikTok. I saw all his stuff.
Yeah, I think I saw him on TV. I ain't dancing. I'm not going to dance, and I'm not going to do all that. But again, you got to get the message out to the people that those people, that the young ones ain't watching the KHON and the Channel 9s and all of that stuff. They're watching TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and all of that stuff. And that's where we got to go. That's where we got to go. We try to do it with this show, but the kids ain't gonna watch this show. But if you get them from short blurb on TikTok, maybe
that's weird, because Kapono had like a choreographed dance and I let him down because he had one and I didn't learn it fast enough. So he was like, nah. If I could get
Kapono to dance on TikTok, we would break all TikTok records.
I think it would.
All TikTok. I know it would.
Challenge
Guaranteed.
thrown, Capono. Sorry.
Well, our colleague Carol Wong Ramsey, who's the NICU, she's the one who kind of pointed out the NICU ICU bed misleading data. She is the TikTok master.
She is a TikTok master.
All
Who was
right.
that? Who?
Carol Wong Ramsey is her name. She's a neonatologist at Kapiolani. She's part of Ahahuiona Kalka, the Native Hawaiian Physicians Association.
I will go look her up.
Yeah.
TikTok.
So she does some good stuff on TikTok. I mean, what I heard from you, Mel, is we got to get the car salesmen out in the communities promoting the
Educating
vaccine.
with us.
But
I think we gotta, we gotta
This
connect
is what we
with
gotta
those.
do. This is what we gotta do. Rather than pay some marketing firm, I sent in a request, a Freedom Information Act or Public Records request to find out how much we paid that marketing firm to do the bribery scam that we did. I want to know what we paid that guy who came on and sounded like a car salesman, but we should have used that money to train people to go out in the communities and inform and educate. That's what we should have done. Whether it's car salesmen or whatever it is, they're good. Those guys are, they don't need as much training. But that's where we got to put the money in getting the heart to heart as
it's the outreach workers, the good old fashioned aunties and all of those ones.
All of you guys, community health clinics, Malama Kauai, Malama Pono, all of those people that are in the day-to-day contact with the communities. That's what we.
Because you know what, it would actually, that's what we were telling them, because you would actually be building infrastructure. So you train them to do this, and I told them essentially you could, for the next thing that we need them to talk about, because back maybe it's going to be some other thing that we're going to have to talk about, but invest in the community and start building these health experts in them. I think that you're right. So I'm glad you filed that FOIA, because I want to know how much we paid them too, because I've been complaining about how much money Oahu spends to do some testing that totally messes up everything anyways. And then I was like, on the outer islands, if you give us that money, we would do a lot more with that, because we don't want any money. And we can be very creative, because we gotta be. I mean, this is it. I think that's the thing. Like right now, Misko, if you see him all on fire right now, it's because we feel like it's do or die time at this point. There's not enough being done, and it's like we're running out of time. Yeah, so that's what it feels like on the outer islands, at least for me.
Well, I think Uncle Charlie's muted, but he wanted to say something. I think this might be a good time to talk about Regeneron, but go ahead, Uncle Charlie.
There's got to be a methodology to teaching all of us that once you're vaccinated, it doesn't stop there. You need to continue to live your life in such a way that you really can't go back how it was before, because you're always going to have to be on your A game. And I think so many people, that's why the complacency and what happens just by a mirrored effect, right? They get vaccinated. They don't tell the guy next to them they're vaccinated. They just see this guy acting complacent, like, hey, no cares in the world, nothing happened to me, right? So brother gonna copy, monkey see, monkey do. He starts doing that, boom, he gets tagged by the virus. And then this multiplier effect, it just keeps on going on and on and on and on. So I think, the voices of those out there like yourself, you gotta tell them that, okay, we'll tell you the medical side of it, but there is also beyond that we have to continue, and that we might have to restructure a little. Because I can tell you right now, just by working at the airport, I can see the impatience just from people coming in. They've been cooped up in a plane coming in. They're impatient. They want to see Hawaii. I get it. But, there's still steps you got to go through, like getting screened, like going and picking up your rent-a-car, like waiting in line at the traffic light. Not this kind of, you just buzz all over the place. Next thing you're a bunch of knuckleheads ready to, kill somebody by mistake because you don't have the patience. But I think somebody needs to be teaching these people this. And I think that if we all learn that, there's this order that's going to take place and we'll eventually get there. It may not be on your timetable, but eventually you'll get there. I think if they learn that, then, I think we'll be okay. But right now, it's just like, I'll give you an example, not to get off the subject. Taxi drivers, they all got to play by the same rules. But yet there's going to be some that's going to try cut in line and try go for the they're gonna try to say, hey, I'm gonna go for the most, but when they find out the most only needs a ride to go from the airport to Kentucky Fried Chicken in Lihue, they says, I don't like you because I rather take the two that's gonna have a ride that's gonna go all the way to Princeville because of the fare, right? No, everybody gotta understand that when it's your turn, you pull up, you take whatever comes. You don't, you kind of pick and choose because if you do that, then you're only gonna have one guy taking all the cream of the crop while everybody get, there's not this sharing that goes on. So I guess what I'm trying to say to everyone out there is that once you get vaccinated, yeah, you can do your part, but you got to continue beyond that. You got to be like an educator yourself. Don't just hold it in and just not share with everybody else. That's what I wanted to say.
Well, I would say, Uncle Charlie, there's always going to be people that make foolish decisions, or people that don't understand. But I'd much rather have a vaccinated fool than an unvaccinated fool because their immune system will take care of them whether their brain does or not. So that's still better than not getting vaccinated.
I just want to say, every so often when I'm looking at the comment scroll, I see a name that I'm like tickled, and I just saw Saleva Atisanoi, all the way from Tokyo. Also known as Konishiki, sumo champion, and he is actually watching our show, Charlie. I'm tickled to death. All the way from Tokyo. What's up, my friend? Mahalo for joining us tonight.
Well, I am saddened that I'm all the way down to 120. I wish I was at that.
I believe in you.
Yes. No, I weigh 120 right now. I just weighed myself and
if this pandemic continues, I might be able to join the sumo ranks too, guys. I tell you, Jesus Christ. But hey, thank you, Saleh, for joining us. Konishiki.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, Regeneron, what's going on, man? What's going on with Regeneron? I saw it on the news tonight. It's so funny. I was talking to Dr. Miskovich. He had this plan. He had this vision of bringing Regeneron to Hawaii because it seemed like the state was kind of dragging their ocoles. And I just talked to Miskovich not long ago. Tonight on the news, I see now the state and the hospital association, everybody's talking about bringing in Regeneron. What the heck's going on?
Yeah, so I was telling him because we were it was an interesting conversation I had with Hilo Medical because at some point they decided not to offer it. And so, patients, this is before the surges and then, they're realizing we were going to have to fly to Oahu to go get it. And so they're like, oh, how come nobody knows that nobody is carrying it on island? And I'm like, well, it's because the public is very helpful when the public asks the questions. And so, yeah, it's one of those, yeah. It's one of the things that we can do to help reduce hospitalizations pretty significantly. And if, we can offer it at an outpatient basis in a nice and kind of broad way, it was one of the things, because I feel like we're at that point where whatever tools we have in our belt, we got to use it. And I'm glad people are actually going to do it then. We'll see.
If I might give some context for people that might not know much about Regeneron, it's monoclonal antibodies. So these are antibodies to the virus, to coronavirus. It had expanded approval in July. So to give an analogy, I've tried to explain to some of my patients, there's that saying that I always thought was a Hawaiian saying, but I've learned that it's probably a universal saying about give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. The vaccine is sort of like teach a man to fish, so you're teaching your body to make your own antibodies. But our vaccines are, the 2 Pfizer vaccines are 3 weeks apart. You fully learn to fish by 2 weeks after that. So, at minimum, if someone started today on an mRNA vaccine with Pfizer, you're looking at 5 weeks from now is when they're fully vaccinated. This surge 5 weeks from now, we're going to be in a bad situation, so we can't wait to learn how to fish right now. But we have people that are, potentially going to be starving for oxygen. What can we do? We can give them a fish. Okay, so the antibody treatment is essentially giving antibodies, not teaching your body how to make it. So it gives temporary protection to people who get COVID now and did not make the decision to get vaccinated earlier. So the good thing about this Regeneron treatment is that it's also available now by subcutaneous administration, meaning injections. So to my patients, we say kui. It's actually 4 injections in your abdomen, the way they usually do it. It can also be given IV, but IV was the way that we did it before, which meant it was hard to do. We couldn't do like Kauai and go down to Miloli'i and give treatment right away, because you have to have an IV and run it over time. So what we're able to do now is give it by injection. It's available to anybody who tests positive for COVID. It should be done as soon as possible once somebody knows they have COVID, before they get very sick, ideally when they're not even sick yet, to protect them from getting worse. Once you're sick and you're in the hospital, there are other treatments that work better, like antiviral treatments like remdesivir. I think there's another antibody that might work in the hospital, but this is like kind of Kauai in my realm is more outpatient. How do we keep people out of the hospital? So this is that new medicine that has that potential. The additional part is that it also has an indication for people who are close contacts of positive cases. So if you're 12 and above, over 40 kilograms, so that's like 85 pounds, something around there, yeah. Then you can get the treatment whether you test positive or not. So that protects you 70% protection or lower risk of getting hospitalized. So not quite as good as a vaccine, and it's only temporary, but it acts immediately. So we have this potential with this surge that we're in to roll this out widely and protect a whole lot of people from being hospitalized. And hopefully if a few months down the road, they reconsider whether they should get a vaccine or not. And we give them that longer lasting teach a man to fish type of protection. So that's my overview. Kauai, jump in.
My version of teach a man to fish, I'll tell you later. But
do we have enough of this medicine, and could that, this is what I'm thinking as you're thinking out loud, that you got all these people that have chosen not to get vaccinated, and now when they hear about this medication, it'll just because they realize that hey, I'm not gonna take the vaccine. If I test positive, I get this new medicine and I'll be fine. Do we have enough of this medicine to give everybody that tests positive, onset, and not wait till they get
I think that's one of the I always tell people, it's a thinking man's problem, right? So we try to think of all of the things that are gonna, and certainly there were people already who, maybe did some reckless things and then are kind of hoping to get the medicine. So the supply itself, we're working on getting more. So I think at the moment, at least for our practice in particular, we're seeing confirmed positives rather than right now doing the prophylaxis. And then the thing about it is it really requires like a provider. So you really need to have a physician around. Like this isn't something that you would want to just go out to the corner store and try and figure out who's going to give it to you. So this is something that, it's a key part of what we do in our clinical kind of practice, right? And I think there are, so people are asking me like, well, doesn't this just kind of make the anti-vaxxers, like kind of give them an out? And I tell them, so the difficult thing about where we live in as a profession in general is we do have to treat everybody no matter what, right? And we're reaching that point in the hospital where we are having to make really just difficult decisions. And that's why I was talking to Kai right before I was on this, was because a month ago, I was at that point already on the Big Island where I couldn't get my COPDers in because we were having a brush fire. People were getting, we're having some problems actually just getting people into the hospital when they needed it. And so, I tell people on a regular basis, the outer islands have a hard time just providing the best quality care that we possibly can. And so, I was like, and we can have these kind of moments of kind of debating the value of giving an anti-vaxxer the treatment. But the reality is, if we have something that can help and can help people stay out of the hospital and not use those resources, we're going to try to use it. And we're going to try to be as kind of blind justice as possible. And, unfortunately, I got to treat everybody. I have some of my own family members who are not vaccinated right now on your island. And, we're just kind of, we have to treat them the same. And I think that's the difficult part about medicine is, like Kapono said, some people are going to be like make some stupid decisions. And I tell people, like, I don't fire them for the stupid decisions. We gotta do the best for the group, right? So for all of us. And that means that we end up, having to educate some of these guys that we might not agree with their choices. We still try to offer the best treatments possible. So right now it's not at the point where, we don't have to, be stingy about it right now, but for our practice, at least we're seeing positives until we get a more regular delivery coming from the mainland.
I would say that when we first, this is like over a course of a week, when we first learned about it, it was like, oh, there's plenty of the supply. Then by the end of the week, oh, there might be a shortage. The way I look at it is that Hawaii is in a critical moment, and we're up there with Idaho, talking about the critical standard of care protocol, triage protocols, so we're in a bad place. If there's ever a time to be aggressive about using this treatment, it's now. And if there's a place, it's Hawaii, maybe only trumped by Idaho. So, if we can get the structures in place to do it, then I say use it. What I run into more is, the people that are hesitant to get vaccines are also hesitant to get an injection that sounds slightly different than a vaccine. So, I'm running, more into that same problem, and we're trying to convince them to get it before they get very sick. So, that's more of the challenge. And I know that was from Dr. Hillsland, who's been our hero at Wilcox, really, for these kind of treatments. I think a month ago, she was running into nobody wanted it, and they wanted ivermectin instead. Please do not take ivermectin. Please do not take horse doses of ivermectin.
Do not.
But now things are changing a little bit, so to me, what I run into more is convincing people that they should get it. And I think as COVID touches more people's lives, I think the people who didn't get vaccinated will be more likely to take this. We wanted to use this venue to get the word out about it, that this is available. And essentially everybody's working on making it accessible. If you're on Hawaii Island, the Kauai and Dr. Miskovich are the people you to contact. If you're on Kauai Island, then probably myself, Dr. Berriman, Dr. Hillsland at Wilcox, and then I know HHSC, they're going to start a clinic at Mahilona Hospital soon. I'm waiting on the details. I was hoping to share that tonight, but I couldn't get them together by tonight, so they don't have it all worked out yet. But we're all working on expanding the access to this treatment.
Yeah.
I did want to, there was a question, let me make sure I'm not muted yet. I had a question, and I think it was a confusion between remdesivir and ivermectin, because the question was, didn't they talk about remdesivir or hydrochloroquine not being good for you? The hydrochloroquine and the ivermectin are the two that should not be used. Of course, so there's I'm going to get into the debate tonight, okay, Joseph. I'm not going to get into the debate. The CDC has come down very hard again recently about the veterinarian version of ivermectin. But the remdesivir is the drug that we're talking about that is perfectly, that is what is being used.
Yes.
So I just wanted to make that before that continues to spread out. It's not remdesivir, is not in the same category as ivermectin and hydrochloroquine.
No, that's widely accepted hospitalized treatment for COVID, as far as I know. I think it's still being followed amongst other things, but not ivermectin, not hydroxychloroquine.
Hydroxychloroquine. I pronounced it wrong. I just real quick, some questions. And maybe we got it all. I know we're kind of at the 8 o'clock hour, but real quick, because I've seen this question come up about the Mu variant. I haven't really checked it out yet. I know it's in all the states. We still question whether or not it's resistant to the vaccine. Any updates briefly on the Mu and even the Lambda?
So it's fairly, so it has reached our state. There's a few states, I think, maybe like 9 of them, I think, that it hadn't been detected in. And it's not a significant portion of what we're seeing, but such was the case with Delta as well before. And so I think we had taught, if you hear talks about COVID in general, this makes that case for really kind of having some global equity in our efforts when it comes to vaccination. So the same kind of focus that we have for the vulnerable, the homeless, the marginalized, and all of these in our kind of demographics, it's the same is true for globally, because our world has gotten so much smaller. And so a lot of these, like India, places like South America. So this one in particular, the mu is coming from South America. And it's usually, we're finding pockets of places where the virus can kind of mutate. And this one in particular has enough of those mutations that we think it might evade the the antibodies that we're creating for our vaccines. And so if you know your Greek alphabet, mu is pretty far down. So there's a few others in between. So delta, and then there's all these other ones in between. And so, that means they're variants of concern. So they're like, we're studying them, but they're not quite the enough to be what we're like what Delta is. So Delta essentially took over, and majority, greater than 88% of what we're seeing in Hawaii right now is Delta.
So but remember not long ago when we were talking about Delta. Remember not long ago when we were talking about it was a variant of concern. It was a variant of concern. Don't worry, guys. This variant is no different than the other variants. Blah blah blah, and then it kicked us in our ass. And I know. So we got to be careful. And I think a lot of people asking about it, just assume that it's like Delta. Just assume that it's going to be like Delta, and it's going to come over and hit us hard. So guys, now is the time to pay attention, be safe. Keep your guard up, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Keep your guard up, yeah. And also kind of just, this is why we have to help the rest of the world get vaccinated as well. And so, when we were taking care of people in the hospital, and I was pointing out that essentially we had the benefit of every single person I was taking care of in the hospital, they had turned down the vaccine at least one time. And that's a very much a first world kind of problem to have, because a lot of my friends who are practicing in different parts of the world haven't even been offered their first dose yet. So we were talking about that essentially your ability to turn down something that can save lives is a privilege. And that's why we do want to focus on kind of that world equity as well. And that's why some of our stuff have to go to them, because we got to stop the variants from making its way from other places to us. Sorry, Kaponoko.
No, I just wanted to comment that Lambda and Mu are the two ones that everyone seems to be talking about now. And my general knowledge is that both might have more vaccine escape possibilities. I just want people to understand that that's not a good reason to not get vaccinated. The more that we vaccinate, the better. We're making a worse situation by allowing the virus more space, more people to infect, and more chance to mutate to become variants. So it's not, I think some people might use that as an excuse and say, well, look, there's another one coming and it might not work anyway for that one. Well, hopefully we can stay ahead of it. We can modify vaccinations, but that's not a good reason not to get vaccinated. Our problem right now is Delta, so I appreciate people looking towards the horizon, but we are in a mess right now that we need to address.
It's Delta, and the fact that our keiki cannot get vaccinated yet. We were hoping to have something, by fall, but it's looking like closer to winter. And then by then we'll have flu as well. So there's just a whole bunch, this is going to be a really busy kind of season for us.
and until we all get a grip and get a handle, and until we all get vaccinated, until we all start practicing safety, come on, man. I mean, we cannot expect to get out of this time. And I love football. I really do. And I watched so much football this weekend. I love college football. And I saw those stadiums, 80+ thousand, 100+ thousand people, all no masks, cheering. And part of me was so happy thinking, we're coming back. And then I thought about it and said, holy moly, can you imagine the cases in those areas in the next couple of weeks? And it's hard to watch because it's so much part of the game, the fans, and yet the collateral damage of that will be crazy. And so it's incredible. Just sad. Yeah. It's sad.
When I tell people it's normal to miss that, I think I tell people, when we talk, because I think the messaging has been kind of, we had to keep on going back to messaging and saying like, you know, vaccinated or not, you know, there's it feels like everything's out of your control, but there's those few things that you can do: wearing your mask, washing your hands, distancing. And basically I told them like, we practiced this a year ago, so now we're going back to a year ago, and you're going to pretend as though you have it, and you're going to operate as though you have it and everybody else has it. And so and I told them, and it's okay, because like, you know, every day to feel like I miss football, I miss going to Vegas or going places, but you know, it's just, we cannot stop, unfortunately. And I just keep on reminding people there are little things that we can do: talk to your family, get them vaccinated, and then protect the kids. Because that's, I mean, so today we tested 200, I think 300 something actually today alone. And I mean, a big chunk of them were sick, and lots of them were kids. And so it's just, it's not looking great out here.
Yeah, my friend just this morning at work told me he just got the call from his son, 12-year-old, from school, close contact, come pick up your son, quarantine, get tested. This stuff, it's going to touch everybody at some point. So you may as well be safe when it touches you, and the safe meaning vaccinations. Anyway, guys, we're at 8:07. I want to give both of you an opportunity to share your mana'o before we roll out of here. So, Dr. Kaohi, beauty before.
Younger than
It's two beautiful people, though. Jesus Christ. But anyway, ladies first. Ladies first.
Thank you. No, I don't know. Can you see my shirt? My hobby PO. Can you see that there? Don't give up. I know it's backwards, but yeah.
No, it's not. Not for us. We can see.
Oh, for you guys. Okay. No, you know, I think that like thank you guys for having me on. You know, I think the reality is we are a year and a half into this, and you know, it's been kind of educating a lot. And I think part of it was talking to patients and telling them kind of the medical side of things, but then the other side of what we do, a lot of it is educating up. And so kind of just like trying to get the pulse, what's actually happening, to the right people, and trying to make sure that we're talking and trying to get, you know, as many people's eyes open as possible. So situation is pretty dire. And I think in general, that's been kind of what my message has been the last few weeks. I'm usually on the Leo on Thursdays. And so that's been the, you know, it's like, it's tiring. And, you know, I know you guys, lots of people are tired of hearing me say it again and again, but, you know, the situation is bad. And so when we are at a point where we don't have space for, you know, regular care anymore. And I'm having to tell people, like, don't avoid getting seen if you need to be seen, but be prepared for what's happening in the hospital. And so I think, you know, it's on the Big Island, I don't have too many options. We don't have a lot of divert options. We don't have a lot of surgery sources, and there's not a lot of people listening to us right now. And so I think that message that you guys talked about before. So, you know, if you guys have, you know, family members that you can talk to and kind of like really help us educate each other, I guess, and kind of reassuring them that we're going to try and do as much as we can and keep on, you know, advocating however we can as, you know, physicians, and we understand what's at stake at this point. But some things that you can do to help us is to help talk to other people and, you know, get the word out. Vaccination is still the best thing, but Kapono's right. 5 weeks, you know, that 5 weeks is crucial. I can't even tell you what it's going to look like in 2 weeks. The hospitalizations, you know, knowing the numbers under the curve with all the positive cases, what we're anticipating coming is not a pretty picture. And so I think, you know, as much as we can, just trying to support each other and trying to just please advocate for just making good choices. And if you can't make good choices, then send them our way and we'll knock them on the head and give them some medicine. You know? But don't let your guard down. Not right now. We didn't survive this long just for this, you know?
Awesome. Dr. Kapono.
Well, I think we have to face the likelihood that we're going to run into this situation. We're going to have to ration care. I wish it wasn't that way, but that's what we're seeing coming. And, you know, the state has started making some plans for how to handle that situation. I mean this as a thought-provoking idea, not that I advocate for this idea, but I've heard a lot of people say, unvaccinated people should not be allowed to access healthcare because they had a choice and they didn't make the right choice. I just want to say, I think you guys would point this out too. You could also argue that these hospitals were founded by our ali'i, like Queen's hospital system was founded by Native Hawaiian ali'i to address pandemics affecting Native Hawaiians primarily. And now they've grown into what they are, serving the entire state, serving everybody, residents and visitors alike. But, we're all in this together. Kapi'olani Hospital is another hospital, the biggest hospital for women and children, which is now part of Hawaii Pacific Health. It was founded by our royalty, who put in a lot of effort to try to make these institutions happen. So it's tough for us as Native Hawaiian doctors to listen to that and think that we're going to turn away Native Hawaiians who did not get vaccinated, because that's the way, that people feel comfortable making that statement. And I understand that. I get frustrated. There are days in my clinic when I am like fed up with the people that are vaccine hesitant, and I've tried how many times trying to convince them. And sometimes I think, well, you get what you ask for, or you're going to suffer the consequences. But overall, it's just an uncomfortable situation. And I would say that you could also make an argument that residents should be prioritized over visitors, because visitors that are here now didn't follow the governor's advice to come here. And imagine how inflammatory that would be. I mean, like, just if that was the policy, imagine how it would be. To me, people would be up in arms. The tourism industry would not be having it. So I think we're calm, but I think there's part inside of me that feels the same way about the implications that we would turn away care for Native Hawaiians at some of these institutions that were founded to serve our people because of a poor decision with vaccinations. But the hopeful light is we have a middle ground. We have monoclonal antibody treatment like Regeneron that we can offer to people that didn't make a good decision. We can cut down their risk of hospitalization by 70% or so. So we have a way that we can impact this. And so we have a way out. So I hope people think about it. I hope that especially our Native Hawaiian population that might have fallen into this anti-masking, anti-vaccination, aloha pono, whatever you want to call it. I hope that you consider what Ka'ohi and I have said tonight, and think harder about whether it's the right decision for you and your ohana. Generally, we think it is. And with Queen Liliuokalani's birthday passing recently, I think we can also be reminded that our beloved leaders in the past, in all likelihood, would have made the same decision. If it was up to them, they probably would have required it by all of us by now, and would not have tolerated all this bickering about whether it's right or not, and protests in the street with no masks on affecting other people. They saw 70% of the population die. And, imagine if you saw that, you would just be over it. I don't want to hear it. This is the requirement. So aloha to everybody, especially our lahui. Please think twice about getting vaccinated. And if you already are, do everything you can to be cautious and protect our community.
Thank you, sir. We'll get back to the main screen here. Charles.
Well, thank you very much to our guests tonight. Appreciate it. What can I say? It was another thought-provoking hour, but very informative. And again, that is our goal, is to bring information forward, let everybody hear it. They can decide. We've had some naysayers on tonight, but they have a right to watch this show. I mean, they have a right to play on the edge. And if they take the wrong step and fall off the cliff, they have a right to fall off the cliff. I mean, that's all I can say. I will try to relate to all of our viewers something that I experienced personally. And that is, my dad died at a young age. He died when he was only 58 years old. That's considered young as a pure Hawaiian. I made this statement the other night that I have brothers, half brothers, but as far as my dad's only son bloodline, it ends with me. I don't have children, but I do have all my stepchildren, and I love them very much. And then once I leave this earth, the Iona bloodline for my dad ends. There's no more after me. So that's part of the reality. My dad suffered a heart attack, and he had it bad. And being someone who went to Kamehameha, I should have paid more attention to what he went through, so that I wouldn't, because I was told by the doctors that I probably have those genes too, and that I may suffer the same fate if I don't correct some of my habits. Like my dad loved to drink. I love to drink. My dad loved to eat a lot of fatty foods. I love to eat fatty foods. But by the time I realized it was too late, I was being strapped on a gurney at KVMH, taken to PMRF, put on a twin engine Cessna, and flown to the island of Oahu in a matter of an hour. And everything was done to save my life. And I have nothing but high admiration for the doctors and staff at the Queens Medical Center. What I'm trying to say is it goes in line with what we've been talking about tonight. I saw all the signs way back when, but I still started to play as if I had no cares in the world. With this pandemic, you can recognize the signs and you can play all you want. But as I said before, you get tagged. You really don't have anybody but to blame but yourself. What we are trying to do is give you information, because we don't want you to be in a position. But we can only lead a horse to water. We can't make it drink. And I feel the frustration that both of our esteemed doctors here feel, because we bring people to that goal line, and it's just that we can't get them to cross for some reason. So we're going to continue to do what we need to do to get you folks to understand that this pandemic is far from over. In fact, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And what a sad statement to make, but that's a fact. And we, as long as we live and breathe on this land, we are going to face it. So I hope and pray that we are prepared. And that's all I'm saying. The information given tonight is that we be prepared, okay? Because we can survive this if we all pull together and keep ourselves safe. But that's what I've been hearing tonight. And for our Hawaiian people out there, just by social and the social positions in our lives and the culture of who we are, we've been at a disadvantage. We got to now compensate more than the average person would have to, just so we can come out just that much more ahead. And I hope and pray you folks do that, because you deserve every right, because this is our land, this is your land, and you deserve to have nothing but the best. And we need to get to that point. We need to get to that point. Okay, Mel?
Thanks, Charlie. I just want to touch on real quick, ration of care. Scary thought. My daughter experienced it in Oregon. Medics came, symptoms not serious enough for her to be taken to the hospital because the hospital was full. We don't want to get there. And we're not going to be able to avoid that on the current trend that we're on. The other thing I wanted to address real quick is, the dividing of the vaccinated versus unvaccinated. That has to stop as well. I love the way you put it, Dr. Capono. We all are, it's our kuleana, right? It's everybody's kuleana to take care of everybody. And think about the smokers out there, right? I mean, should we say, hey, during this ration of care, if you made the stupid decision to smoke, knowing that you are going to get some kind of problems with your lungs and your asthmas and your cancer or whatever, then we're not going to treat you because you made a stupid decision years ago to start smoking or drinking. Or if you get into a car accident, you were drunk, you made a stupid decision, so we're not going to treat you. That's not going to happen in our American civilization. So what we all got to think about, and don't get me wrong, I respect the people's rights. At this point in the game, it is critical that we get vaccinated. It's critical that we all make an intelligent choice. There's some out there that are medically unable to. this is not for you. Those that are medically unable to get the vaccine, obviously this is not meant for you. But for those of you that haven't been vaccinated, all I ask is that you get the right information and then make your decision after you get the right, accurate information. If you look at the numbers, people, look at how many vaccinated people are in ICUs and on life support versus those that are unvaccinated. If that's not enough, I really don't know what else there is. So with that, folks, please, 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 remember a year ago, we treated everybody and ourselves as if we had the virus. Remember when we had to assume that everyone had the virus? We need to get back to that spot right now because we got to stop this freaking spread before it shuts us down. All right. With that, guys, tomorrow night we got Dr. Miskovich and Mayor Harry Kim. That'll be fun. I can promise you. I spoke to Mayor Kim. Not a happy man. I don't think we'll see the same Harry Kim that we saw a month ago or so. He's agitated. It'll be fun. So please join us tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. Doctors, you guys, thank you for all you do for our communities. Keep safe. We love you guys. God bless. And our viewers, aloha, everybody.